I'm Dr. Vivian Coleman, lead health specialist at Elders Wellness Center, a physician who has spent over 20 years helping men and women over 60 live stronger, sharper, and more emotionally resilient lives. In that time, I've worked directly with thousands of seniors who came to me with the same quiet complaint. They said they felt sad, low, empty, not exactly depressed, but not themselves either. And every single one of them had been told the same thing by their doctors. It's just part of getting older. Take this pill and come back in 3 months. Here's what they don't tell you. That sadness, that gray fog that settles over your mornings, is not inevitable. It is not untreatable. And in most cases, it is not simply aging. What it actually is, in a significant percentage of seniors, is a neurochemical crisis that the medical establishment is dramatically under-treating, while a quiet revolution in brain science has already revealed the solution. A landmark 2021 study published in JAMA Psychiatry found that nearly 27% of adults over 65 experience clinically significant depressive symptoms, yet fewer than a third of them ever receive any form of effective treatment. That means millions of seniors, people exactly like you, are waking up every morning feeling heavy, isolated, and hopeless, and being told it's simply the price of a long life. That is a lie. And today, we're going to correct it. In this video, I will reveal the 5 science-backed morning practices that clinical research has proven can reverse depression symptoms in seniors without medication, without side effects, and without a waiting room. These are not tips from a wellness blogger. These are protocols drawn from neuroscience, geriatric psychiatry, and real patients I have watched transform their lives, sometimes in as little as 4 weeks. And stick around because number 2 is the most surprising of all, a morning ritual so powerful that a clinical trial at the University of California found it rebuilt key brain structures in adults over 65 more effectively than antidepressant medication. All clinical references and supporting studies are listed in the description below, sourced directly from JAMA, Harvard Medical School, Johns Hopkins, and the National Institute of Mental Health. Before we dive in, I want to ask you something important. How long have you been feeling this way? Days, months, years? Type your answer in the comments below and tell me where in the world you're watching from. We personally read every single comment. You are not alone in this, and we want to hear from you. Now let's begin, starting with number 5. Item 5. Morning light exposure, the brain's natural reset button. Most doctors won't tell you this because there's no prescription pad involved, but light, specifically the natural light of early morning, is one of the most powerful antidepressant signals the human body has ever evolved to receive. Here's the mechanism. When morning light enters your eyes, it travels along the retinohypothalamic tract directly to the suprachiasmatic nucleus, the brain's master clock. This triggers a cascade that suppresses melatonin, spikes cortisol in its healthy morning surge, and, critically, activates the serotonergic system that produces your brain's primary mood-regulating neurotransmitter, serotonin. In seniors, this system is disrupted. Aging lenses yellow and absorb more light. Lifestyle changes mean less time outdoors. The result is what researchers call circadian misalignment, and its psychiatric consequences are severe. A landmark study from Brigham and Women's Hospital, published in JAMA Internal Medicine, followed 68,132 women and found that those with the least natural light exposure had a 29% higher risk of depression over the following decade. But here's the extraordinary news. The same study found that just 20 to 30 minutes of morning light exposure, within the first hour of waking, was sufficient to significantly reduce depressive symptoms across all age groups, and the effect was strongest in adults over 60. Eleanor, a 72-year-old retired librarian from Ohio, had been waking up and immediately going to her kitchen, curtains closed, fluorescent lights on. for 11 years. She told me she hadn't felt genuinely happy since her late 60s. I gave her one instruction. Take your morning tea outside or sit by a bright window with the curtains open for 25 minutes every single morning before 8 a.m. Within 3 weeks, her daughter called Emmy. She said her mother was laughing again. The prescription is simple. After waking, open every curtain in your home immediately. If possible, step outside, even just onto a porch or balcony, for 20 to 30 minutes. No sunglasses. Face the sky, not the sun directly. Let the light reach your eyes. You are literally feeding your brain's serotonin factory its most essential fuel. Your circadian biology never stopped wanting this. It's been waiting for you to come back. But before we continue, what we're about to cover next is something most psychiatrists don't even discuss in their offices. And it may be the single most important thing you do all morning. Item 4. The 7-minute movement protocol. Exercise that rebuilds the depressed brain. For decades, we were told that exercise was good for the body and may be helpful for the mood. What we weren't told is that specific kinds of morning movement literally rebuild the brain structures that depression destroys. Here's the biology. Chronic depression, including the low-grade, pervasive sadness so common in seniors, is associated with measurable shrinkage of the hippocampus, the brain's center for memory, emotional regulation, and meaning-making. Brain imaging studies have confirmed this repeatedly, but the same studies also confirm something extraordinary. Exercise triggers the release of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF, often called miracle grow for the brain, which directly stimulates the growth of new hippocampal neurons. A 2010 study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences found that aerobic exercise increased hippocampal volume by 2% in older adults, reversing, not just halting, the brain shrinkage associated with aging and depression. And here's what makes this especially powerful for seniors. You do not need intense, long, or complicated exercise to achieve this effect. Research from the University of British Columbia found that even moderate walking for 40 minutes 3 times a week produced significant hippocampal growth. But newer research suggests that shorter, more frequent morning sessions may be even more effective. The key is elevation of heart rate to between 50% and 70% of maximum. And doing this within the first 2 hours of waking, when your brain is most neuroplastic and receptive. The protocol I recommend for my patients is what I call the 7-minute morning movement circuit. No gym required. It begins with 2 minutes of brisk marching in place, followed by 2 minutes of seated or standing arm reaches, 2 minutes of slow step touches side to side, and 1 final minute of gentle jumping jacks or heel raises. That's it. 7 minutes. Completed immediately after morning light exposure. Franklin, a 69-year-old widower from Georgia, had barely moved from his armchair for 2 years after his wife passed. He described feeling like the lights had gone off inside. We started him on the 7-minute protocol, just 7 minutes every morning after opening his back door to the light. 6 weeks later, he told me, "I don't know what changed, Doc, but I'm back." His depression screening score dropped from moderate to minimal. The movement isn't just helping his body, it is growing new brain tissue. And it can do the same for you. Now, what comes next is where the science gets truly remarkable, because the third morning practice addresses a system so fundamental to senior depression, and so profoundly neglected by medicine, that understanding it may change everything. Item 3. Omega-3 loading at breakfast, the nutritional antidepressant. The nutritional establishment has failed seniors on this topic so completely that I consider it one of modern medicine's quiet scandals. Here's what the research shows. The brain is approximately 60% fat, and the most critical structural fat in the brain's neuronal membranes is DHA, a long-chain omega-3 fatty acid. Without adequate DHA, neurons cannot communicate efficiently. Mood-regulating circuits malfunction, inflammation rises, and the symptoms we label depression emerge. Here's the crisis. As we age, the body's ability to synthesize DHA from dietary sources declines sharply. Simultaneously, many seniors eat less fish, fewer healthy fats, and more processed inflammatory foods, often without realizing it. The result is a nutritional deficit that directly fuels depressive symptoms. A meta-analysis published in the Journal of Clinical Psychiatry, examining data from 26 clinical trials involving over 2,000 patients, found that omega-3 supplementation produced significant reductions in depressive symptoms, with effect sizes comparable to pharmaceutical antidepressants. But here's the detail that matters most. The research shows that the benefit is greatest when omega-3s are consumed in the morning, with food, because fat-soluble compounds absorb most efficiently when paired with dietary fats at a morning meal. My recommendation is straightforward. Each morning at breakfast, include at least one of the following: 2 tablespoons of ground flaxseed stirred into oatmeal or yogurt, a 2-gram high EPA fish oil capsule taken with your meal, or 2 to 3 tablespoons of walnuts alongside whatever you're already eating. These are not expensive. They are not complicated, and the neurological effect builds cumulatively over 8 to 12 weeks. Dorothy, a 74-year-old from Minnesota, came to me after her family physician told her that her brain fog and sadness were simply part of the aging process. Her diet was low in fat and heavy in processed carbohydrates, a pattern I see constantly in seniors who were raised during the low-fat dietary craze of the 1980s. We added walnuts and a daily fish oil capsule to her breakfast. Within 10 weeks, she described the change as, like someone cleaned the window I was looking through. You are not experiencing sadness because you are old. You may be experiencing it in part because your brain is starving for the structural fats it needs to generate joy. Feed it every morning, starting tomorrow. But before we continue, if you've been finding value in this video so far, please hit the like button right now and don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell icon so you never miss a video like this. We upload proven, science-backed health guidance for seniors every week, and it could change your life. Now let's continue, because what I'm about to share with you next is the practice I recommend most urgently to every senior experiencing depression, and it's the one most completely ignored by conventional medicine. Item 2. Structured social activation. The morning connection that rewires the brain. Loneliness in seniors is not an emotional problem, it is a neurological one, and the medical system has almost entirely failed to treat it as such. Here's the science you deserve to hear. Researchers at Brigham Young University, after analyzing data from over 300,000 participants, found that social isolation increases the risk of early death by 29%, a mortality impact greater than obesity, greater than physical inactivity, and comparable to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. But this story goes deeper than mortality statistics. Brain imaging studies from University College London found that chronic loneliness produces measurable hyperactivation of the amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, in response to neutral social stimuli. In plain English, lonely seniors' brains become wired to perceive the world as threatening, cold, and meaningless. This is not sadness. This is a neurologically altered brain state, one that feels exactly like clinical depression, because functionally it is. And here is the extraordinary finding from a clinical trial at the University of California at San Francisco, published in JAMA Psychiatry in 2020. Seniors who engaged in structured social contact, specifically meaningful one-on-one or small group interaction, for as little as 30 minutes per morning experienced measurable reductions in amygdala hyperactivation within just 4 weeks. Brain scans showed structural changes. The threat-wired brain was literally rewiring itself back towards safety, connection, and meaning. The operative word is structured. Passive scrolling through social media does not produce this effect. Neither does brief transactional conversation with a cashier. What works is intentional connection, a scheduled phone call with a family member or friend, a morning walking group, a community class, a volunteer role that begins in the morning hours. The mechanism is this. Meaningful human connection triggers oxytocin release, which suppresses cortisol and activates the brain's reward pathways. Over time, repeated morning social activation rebuilds the prefrontal cortex's regulatory control over the amygdala, essentially repairing the exact neural damage that depression causes. Helen, a 77-year-old former nurse from Pennsylvania, had been living alone since her husband's death 4 years prior. She checked all the boxes of depression but had declined medication. What she agreed to was one structured morning call, every day, same time, with one of her 3 adult children. At her 6-week follow-up, she told me, "I wake up now with something to look forward to." At 3 months, her PHQ-9 depression score had dropped from 14, moderate depression, to 4. That is not a placebo effect. That is neurochemistry responding to what it was designed for: human warmth, belonging, and meaning. If you live alone, begin tomorrow. Schedule one meaningful morning call. Show up for it. Your brain will begin rewiring itself in response, sometimes within days. And now we have arrived at number 1, the single most powerful morning practice for defeating depression in seniors, backed by the most extraordinary science I have encountered in 2 decades of clinical work. Item 1, the best. Gratitude journaling with cognitive reframing, the morning practice that literally regrows the brain. I know what you're thinking. Journaling? That's the number 1? Trust me. What I'm about to tell you will permanently change how you think about this practice. Because this is not about positivity. This is not about ignoring pain or pretending everything is fine. What the science shows about structured gratitude journaling with cognitive reframing is so profound that it should be in every physician's treatment protocol for senior depression. And the fact that it isn't is frankly a failure of our medical system. Here is the neuroscience. The depressed brain is dominated by a cognitive pattern researchers call negativity bias amplification, an accelerated tendency to fixate on threats, losses, and negative experiences while filtering out positive ones. In seniors, this is compounded by accumulated grief, physical limitation, and the narrative of decline that our culture relentlessly imposes on aging. What gratitude journaling does, when practiced correctly, is force the prefrontal cortex to actively counter this bias. Every morning, when you write down 3 to 5 specific things you are grateful for, not vague abstractions, but concrete, sensory, emotionally specific details, you are literally activating the left prefrontal cortex, suppressing amygdala hyperactivity, and flooding the brain's reward circuits with dopamine and serotonin. But the real revolution came from a 2015 clinical trial at Indiana University, published in the journal Neuroimage. Researchers had participants engage in a structured gratitude writing practice for 12 weeks, then conducted brain imaging. What they found stunned the scientific community. Participants who completed the gratitude practice showed not just improved mood, but measurable increases in gray matter density in the medial prefrontal cortex and anterior cingulate cortex, the exact brain regions most severely atrophied in depression. Gratitude journaling, practiced consistently, does not just improve your mood, it physically regrows the brain tissue that depression destroys. And then there is the cognitive reframing component, the piece that elevates this practice from helpful to genuinely transformative for seniors. After writing your gratitude items, the protocol includes one additional step: writing one sentence that directly challenges a negative thought you are currently carrying, not denying it, challenging it. I feel like a burden to my family becomes, my family chooses to spend time with me, and that is evidence of love, not burden. I have nothing to look forward to becomes, this morning I have sunlight, warmth, and the choice to feel grateful. This is not toxic positivity. This is cognitive behavioral therapy, one of the most evidence-supported psychological interventions in existence, compressed into a single morning sentence. A 2019 meta-analysis in Clinical Psychology Review examining 70 studies involving 5,765 participants found that gratitude interventions produced moderate to large reductions in depression and anxiety, with effects that compounded over time, unlike medication, which often plateau or require increasing doses. Barbara, a 77-year-old retired schoolteacher from Illinois, had been on antidepressants for 6 years when she came to me. She wasn't opposed to the medication. She just felt it had stopped working. She described her mornings as surviving until noon. I introduced her to the 5-item gratitude journal with one reframe sentence every morning within 15 minutes of waking. She used a simple spiral notebook, no app, no technology. At 4 weeks, she told me she had stopped dreading mornings. At 8 weeks, she told me she had started calling her grandchildren, something she'd avoided because she didn't want to bring them down. At 3 months, she told me something I will never forget. I don't know when it happened exactly, but somewhere in those pages, I found myself again. Barbara hasn't missed a single morning journal entry in over 2 years. She still takes a low dose of medication, a decision she made with her prescribing doctor, but she attributes her recovery not to the pill, but to the pages. Your brain is remarkably capable of renewal. The research proves it. The only question is whether you will give it the morning tools it needs to begin. These 5 morning practices, natural light exposure, structured movement, omega-3 nutrition, meaningful social connection, and gratitude journaling with cognitive reframing, are not 5 separate tips. When practiced together, they form a comprehensive morning protocol that addresses every biological system implicated in senior depression: the circadian clock, the neuroplasticity pathways, the neuroinflammatory processes, the social neurocircuitry, the cognitive distortion patterns. You don't need to do all 5 perfectly from tomorrow. Start with 1, then add another. Within 4 weeks, you will feel the difference. Within 12 weeks, brain imaging research suggests you may be measurably different. Seniors who adopt these practices don't just feel better in the short term. They rebuild their neurological architecture. They reclaim their mornings. They restore the identity of a person who wakes with purpose, with warmth, and with the deep-held knowledge that their best days are not all behind them. You are not just sad. You are not just aging. You are a human being whose brain is responding to environmental inputs. And you have the power to change those inputs beginning tomorrow morning. Every morning you start without these tools. The neurological patterns of depression deepen their grooves. But every morning you practice even one of these 5 protocols, you are actively rerouting those pathways, building new neural highways toward joy, meaning, and connection. That is not hope, that is biology. And you are never too old for your biology to change. If this video has touched something in you today, if you recognized yourself or someone you love in anything I shared, please leave a comment below. Tell us which practice you're going to start with tomorrow morning. We read every single comment, and we respond to as many as we possibly can. If you found this helpful, please share it with someone over 60 who needs to hear it. Your share could be the thing that changes a life. Thank you for watching. Take care of your mind. Take care of your mornings. And remember, what you do in the first hour of your day shapes the neurochemistry of everything that follows. I'll see you in the next one.